And we are live. Welcome to the latest installment of the Run to Daylight podcast. I am your host, Todd Burrows. I am joined today by Darren Armani at Fantasy Mojo. Darren has the ultimate site for the FFPC. Pretty much everything that you could think or want to have is in there. We're going to take a quick look at some of the features, then log into the best ball ADP. And once we do that, we're going to go round by round, just kind of pick out some guys we like at ADP, some guys we don't, maybe some guys who are going earlier or later than on the FFPC than on Underdog. And speaking of the FFPC is where you need to play fantasy football this season. No salary caps, no DFS, no new formats to learn, just the pure drafting fun that you've loved for years. I've spoken for a long time about the FFPC is where the majority of my money goes, and the FFPC is the home to not one, but two never too early best ball contests. Draft in the never too early best ball tournament today and take your shot at $25,000 grand prize. Or if you look for a contest with a five-finger grand prize and just a $35 entry, or you just are in love with the Superflex format, the Never Too Early Superflex tournament might be the contest you're looking for. And announced recently the Fantasy Pros tournament with $1 million up top. I think this is the earliest it's ever launched. You can play that as well. More than 130 incoming rookies are already in the draft pool. Go to myffpc.com. That is myffpc.com and get in some contests. Darren, really glad to have you back. It's been a couple years. Thank you for joining me on the show.
Sure. We're gonna talk some best ball, and we're going to talk redraft when basically 90% of the fantasy communities is in hibernation. Like, I think there's only the true sickos are out here drafting right now.
So, well, that's the one thing you do want to be careful about is, like I joined two best ball tournament. I wanted to get through all the rookies that I really thought I needed to watch before I really started doing the 125s. After last year, I did not have a good pass-through rate. I had more teams in the semis, in the finals than I ever had before, but I did not get one of those magical rides the last week. So I took my time, and there's some new guys in there, but you do see a lot of the same faces. That guy, Ray GQ, or him and he has a partner, Scott Connor. One draft, I had the 12th pick. They had the 11th. The next draft I joined, they had the first pick. I had the second. So you do end up next to a lot of the same guys, Mojo.
Yeah, the last 125, never too early that I did. When I looked at the owners tab, 10 out of 12 guys had the experienced green star. So it's just, I imagine it's a lot of guys who have credits that are just, rolling them over real quick, and you gotta use them or lose them. So, but it was heavy. It was heavier. Then I jumped for a goof. I did a $5 best ball just for research purposes. I needed access to the draft room, and there's like one person there with the green star. But that's much more of a painful draft experience than, at least with the 125. You get the experienced owners; they move pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle so far. I did a couple underdog slows, and I mean, you want to talk about slow. I mean, why even join a draft if you're not going to check once or twice a day? I mean, there's been days when there's been like I could go, a day or two without making a pick, which is just insanity. But and I don't want to play heavy volume early. And the way you get around slow drafts is by doing enough of them that you never notice that one of them is going slow. right? Like I tend to do anywhere between 8 and 13 drafts at a time when I do slows. Right now, I'm doing 3 on Underdog, and I just joined my second on the FFPC, and it can be torture. All right, let's share the screen. Before we do that, I do want to ask, just talk a little bit about your site, the history, how long you've been doing it, any key facts that you might want someone to know.
The site's been around since 2009, actually. And I think in 2010, we started to put the FFPC data there. So we actually have history. You can look at drafts going back as far as 2010. So I think every draft conducted, except for some of the live ones in Vegas, you can get a full history. But it's basically ADP. As we went along, we expanded beyond ADP. We started showing the draft boards for every draft. We've got waiver wire histories.
Yeah, let's go in and give everyone a quick look.
Anything you might need as far as if you're playing at an FFPC, it's like the ultimate reference resource. And for some people, it's like reading the news in the morning, because I know the same people they log in every day and they see like what's the draft results from the last evening. So it's a one stop.
I actually should spend more time there. All right. So this is the site. Let me give it so that there we go. Can you see that pretty well?
Yeah.
All right. So let's go through, and so there's a virtual site tour up top. There, Darren mentioned the different years. Look how far back you can look, and then when you go into it, you can see all the different categories that you can look up. Pros versus Joes was something Darren was heavily involved in starting and continues to be a big part of. Pretty much puts it all together. And then you look here, and it's kind of the current stuff. We're going to go in here in a minute to the 2024 FFPC draft boards and ADP, Dynasty Cut Down Tracker, Fantasy Pros Championship Preview and Retrospective, Stack Finder, which is very helpful if you're trying to get unique, winner analysis, and one of my favorites, and I will jump in here real quick and just show. It's very hard to find week by week stats for a lot of sites, and Darren gives you the week by week stats, and so and it's by position, but you can sort on any column that you want. So if you want to see who the high scorer was week 2, it was Daniel Jones, believe it or not, and so you can really do the deep kind of analysis that you want to do. I haven't pulled my sheet yet together that tracks how effective people are for best ball. But the main thing I wanted to go through with you guys, so for ADP, Darren, like the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, you can get it by, the tradition.
Right now we do it by month because the ADP is not changing much because there's not too much activity, right? So it's not
correct. It'll be the last 3 days when we get into the heavy fantasy season. It updates every 3 days, I think, is the point you want to make.
Well, it updates every day, but as far as a time window,
yes.
What you see there is every format that the FFPC has. There's a separate. I mean, you got to look at ADP by contest format. And by the time we get to June, there's like 15 formats between the dynasty, all the flavors of the dynasty leagues, and all the variations of best ball, and you got main event. It's just so the cool thing is it's all here. It's all split out, and as you see when you jump into one of these, it's all color coded, and the FFPC guys themselves sort of refer to this when they do their weekly shows as well, because it's very user friendly.
It's pretty amazing. Did that help it look better?
Yeah.
All right. So what we want to do is we want to kind of go round by round and pick our favorites. If you want to jump in the chat and the comments, feel free to do that. I will check back in every once in a while. All right, so we jumped into round one, and we've seen Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill. That's a little different than what you see over at Underdog. Brees Hall, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Gibbs, Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, and Garrett Wilson tend to be the top 12.
That tab's not showing. Right now we're seeing the homepage. Did you open it another window?
Oh, yeah, I did. Hold on.
That's the window you want to capture.
Yep. I got. Thank you for.
So I don't know if you're doing the.
I got it.
You can show the ADP by the draft. So you're doing it by the draft board. So there's two ways we show it. We'll show it by the draft board, or we'll show it by a list. And then if you do it by a list,
I did that once. I did that once.
It's better for discussion.
Yeah, and so the great thing about the list is it also gives you. The list will also give you the earliest the guy's been drafted, the latest the guy's been drafted, as well as his average draft position. So, but I like looking at it this way. It's kind of what I'm used to from when you're doing a draft. Anyone jump out at you as a favorite and a guy that you're like, I can't believe he's the first round pick?
It's pretty chalk. Garrett Wilson is maybe the one guy, like, it's still a leap of faith that Aaron Rodgers comes back, and that might be the riskiest one. Sometimes I see him last to the middle of the second round. I guess just from a talent perspective, he's a first rounder. But he's the one that I would kind of waver on. It's maybe more risky than the others.
Yeah, I'm going to say my favorite right now is the guy that I'm likely to take earlier than he goes is Bijan. I think the market has really underestimated, Darren, just how big it could be having a new system there and having Arthur Smith not be there. Your thoughts on Bijan as a pick this year?
I think he certainly has the ceiling, but I think when you're in a draft, what it comes down to is more of a given drafter's draft strategy and approach. I think they'll either take him or not because of what his outcome might be, but because you have such a heavy zero RB influence in the community right now. People will pass on him just for that reason. I still take Brees Hall ahead of him, but he's a safe pick, Bijan, I think.
Yeah, so when you look at the running back position, after the top three guys, maybe like I like Gibbs, but he's not my fourth guy. Jonathan Taylor is my fourth guy, but I get it why people like Gibbs. I think his role will grow. But I don't think David Montgomery's going anywhere. You also so I like taking one of the top three. Last year I thought there was great value at running back all the way through the draft. This year with a weaker rookie class and running back have been moving up, at least on Underdog. It doesn't look as much on the FFPC where you get, in my opinion, savvier drafters. But in general, I like the security of Christian McCaffrey, Brees Hall, and Bijan because I think each one of them can give you a great ceiling. And I prefer hero running back to zero running back this year. Any thoughts on that?
I've been drafting. I seem to be getting end spots. So I've actually, as much as I'm a proponent of RB, I've been hitting the wide receivers more, mostly because I haven't had the chance at Bijan or Brees. Like those are the guys that are going to be, between the pipes essentially. So when I'm drafting at the ends, I'm taking receivers. But Gibbs is interesting too, and one of the things. So if you have that type of decision and you're having, you're wanting to kind of dive into it. This is where you would like go into the stats page, because I think that page will show you, how Gibbs sort of took off towards the end of the year, right? And it'll also show you, it's essentially a heat map of what's the ceiling for a given player. So I would sometimes go back into that to kind of be a tiebreaker.
Yeah, but that's when Montgomery was out.
Yeah.
Montgomery, if you look, Montgomery. So I guess you know what I should do. I should
go there and you can see it'll. You could like look at it'll show the.
No, I know. I what I want to do is I want normally I like to just do a tab rather than the whole screen because you can see more. But let me just switch and share my whole screen, and then I can jump in and out easier. So if you go back to, you're talking about stats.
Right. So go to the stats page.
Yep. And so let's go to player stats. Let's do a search real quick for Gibbs.
So you can see all his spike weeks showing up because this is color coded. So you've got those 20 plus weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They all came after week 6, and then Montgomery.
Yeah. So Montgomery got hurt.
He was there. Montgomery was. I mean, that's not going to. He's not going to. There's not a lot of spike weeks there to really.
Well, Montgomery got hurt in week 5. You can see right here, and he had 2 huge weeks before he got hurt. And then he missed 2 games, a bye, and he came back and he did not come back to the same role he left. So absolutely, but and the spike weeks are more important. So I get what you're saying about Gibbs, and that's why I like doing this exercise, because I think you've got to have Gibbs because Montgomery could get hurt again, or they could just decide to really go with Monty more this year.
Right, just roll with him, and then you can't forget about the playoffs as well. How well Gibbs did too. You won't see that
playoffs. Yeah, how Detroit blew the chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
All right, round 2. What jumps out at me in round 2 is versus underdog. Devontae Adams goes at the end of round 2, beginning of round 3. Hold on one second. My daughter is trying to get me, and she's sick. Devontae goes a decent bit later than.
Sometimes he'll go into third even.
Yeah, well, he does on underdog. Here, he seems to be way more in the middle. So there's really, and Travis Kelce is what is like tight end 3 or 4 on underdog. He's still right there near the top.
Within the last week, I'm seeing him more towards the middle or the early parts. And this brings up another point. So if you want to see the evolution of a player's ADP, if you're looking at the list version of the ADP,
yep, I'm going to go in,
and you can click on the player, and then you get a plot diagram of
that. I did not know.
Yeah.
Oh, so hold on.
It's like an Easter egg. So go click on Travis Kelce's name. So now what you get is the chart. You get the chart, and it's really cool when you get this over the entire draft season from like February to September. I mean, you can really see the trends. So what this is showing you is within, it'll plot for you. So you can see at a glance, like so earlier, he almost went to the 4th round, like back in the first week or so. but now he's more. Somebody took him in the first round. You can see there. That must have been February 19th. So it just gives you an idea, without just looking at numbers. This gives you a visual representation of where these guys are going in drafts.
I love that, Darren. I did not know that, and
So
I
there's always
should.
something new. There's so many secrets that you learn every time. And if you were to look at, and like we said, you could go back at prior years ADP. You could look at the 2023 ADP. I don't want you to go there. But when you click on the players, you could see somebody wacky like, I don't know, who's somebody whose ADP shifted. But it would be, it's really cool.
Well, like a Tank Dell.
Right.
Right. Like if you went into last year and you looked at like someone, there were certain guys who got really hot.
Right.
Yeah. And you see them jumping around. So
let's get back. Which is I'll throw this in here. That's good from a tournament perspective, because then you can see where you're getting a guy versus where other people were getting a guy like earlier within the same tournament, right? Because that's a big thing for people who are doing like fantasy pros or main event. They're like, I got him in the 13th round back at the beginning. I'm not going to pay the 4th, 5th round price now,
Yeah, and I've always been of the opinion that my goal is to make the best team, because ultimately, especially in a season long, I want that league prize, right? You're not advancing without the league prize. And so if a guy was going in the 13th round and now he's going in the 4th round, if I think he's a 4th round pick and he is the best 4th round pick for my team, I'm going to take him. I'm not going to load up on him if I had him earlier. Where I tend to fade it, Darren, is when I miss the guy in the 13th round. Then I don't want him when he moves way up.
If you don't have any shares at the lower price.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I'll bite if I really feel that, but it tends to be, if I didn't have any shares in the 13th round, I'm probably not going to like the guy in the 4th round. Right.
Yeah. And I get that, but I'm of the opinion, like once you're in the 3-week sprint, it doesn't matter then. Right. Because if that was a player who finishes, performs as a top 4 guy in that 3-week sprint, and you don't have him, like you're not going to be in the money.
Yeah, and the truth is that, again, I'm open to it, but I'm saying I'm less likely. Right. Where some people just say, no, I'm not going to take a guy who's moved up that far. I've never gone for that logic. All right, let's go back to the board. Round 3. He goes later on the FFPC than he does on Underdog, where he's the mid-second round pick right now. And he might be the next coming of Marvin Harrison. But Marvin Harrison Jr., to me, in the early 3rd, it's too early. That's the big one that jumps off at me. I find myself taking a decent amount of Stephon Diggs and hoping that it was some kind of weird injury thing toward the end of last year. Your thoughts on the 3rd round and Marvin Harrison's price?
So I think I tend to take a very statistical approach to these things, and I am not on board with this Marvin Harrison hysteria. I think what happens is this time of year, people have dynasty brain, and it bleeds over into the drafting. People want to have Marvin Harrison on their teams, and they might be locked out of getting him because you have to have the 101 in dynasty drafts. But people want to roster Marvin Harrison. But so a comp for Marvin Harrison, and I put this on Twitter, is that this is where he's going now is about where Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith went last year. And those guys had subpar. They had a 15% advance rate in the never too early best ball draft, which is subpar. So for Marvin Harrison to pay off there, he needs to outproduce what Marvin Harrison and Devonta Smith did. And looking at the teams that he could get drafted by, if one of the top 4, I don't think any of those are landing spots that's going to put him in a position to do that in a redraft league in his rookie year. So I'm not paying up for Marvin Harrison. I'm going to wait till the draft and maybe then I start.
You got to play the long game. If you don't like a player's ADP, who was the guy last year? Oh man, there was someone last year that I really felt was going too early. And then later, you got to trust your own judgment, because what ends up happening is, and I forgot that I was sharing my whole board. Sorry about that. When I feel like if you don't like a guy's price really, really bad, you have to trust that the field is going to come around to what you see. Like last year, I can't tell you how many players that I liked that I was scooping in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th rounds of drafts. And all of, especially the 19th, 20th round guys who weren't even being drafted in half their draft, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Tank Dell. I mean, I was taking all three of those guys in the 19th, 20th round. Then all of a sudden they're going in the 14th, 15th. That makes you feel good about your evaluation, but it also you have to have confidence that you've got most of the players scouted right. And if you've got a guy who you don't think is a good value, you got to hope that the field catches up. The other way I'll take them, if he's going, Marvin Harrison is going like Neighbors. I love Neighbors. I like Neighbors as much, if not more, than Marvin Harrison. And, if he's going at the beginning of the fourth round on the FFPC, I know on Underdog he's dropped a couple times, 6-7 picks beyond. You get one of those drafts where people aren't as locked into the rookies. That's when I take my Malik Neighbors shares because I really like him. And a fourth round pick is a big difference than a mid-second or early third.
Right. That's where you get you get the value of the rookies is later in the draft. So the other thing is people might have this Puka Nacua bias. Like, wow, look how great he did. He was a rookie and he produced so well. But Puka Nacua, like you said, was being drafted in the 19th, 17th round. That's why all the teams did so great. If you were drafting Puka Nacua in the first round, you wouldn't have had as much success for your teams because you don't have that other first round pick to pair with Puka Nacua. So people have that. But so if you're paying the draft, it's all relative to the draft capital that you're paying for the person.
Correct. Fourth round. I don't get the Dalton Kincaid love.
That's why I call him Golden Boy, because people just love Dalton Kincaid, and it just.
I mean, him and James Cook and Pacheco. I mean, to me, Pacheco and James Cook are dead zone running backs, traditional dead zone running backs. I don't get their ADP. I've taken James Cook once or twice. And I can't go for Kincaid either. I would rather take, I think DK Metcalf is who I never draft in the later parts of the fourth round. I think he's very interesting. I think Waddle is exceedingly interesting. Devonta Smith is exceedingly interesting. Mike Evans, even Cooper Kupp, Drake London. The fourth round for me, Darren, is a have or have nots in the sense of there's a bunch of guys I'm going to be loading up on right now, and a bunch that I'm not going to touch. Anyone that I talked about that you feel differently about?
Yeah, I think you got to look at what the ceiling, the ability to deliver that ceiling consistently. I don't know that Pacheco or James Cook, like even late last season. Cook had a few spike weeks, but I didn't have the trust to start him. And this is best ball, but fourth round James Cook, it might be expensive. Guy, I would like Metcalf. Evans is a guy I would like here. Devonta Smith, I could go either way. but maybe this is a good spot to take your quarterback, or there's somebody in the next round that
Yeah, I don't mind Mahomes or Lamar at ADP. Fifth round, I like T. Higgins. I know he might end up back on the Bengals, and it looks like he will. But I think that he's someone of interest. I think people underestimate Evan Engram, and I do like the tight ends. The one draft I was in, we had a hellacious tight end run, right where you see it in the fifth round. Um, I'm not drafting Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, and Derrick Henry is a guy that I might dabble in. And I think Zay Flowers is a trap too in the fifth round. Your thoughts?
Evan Ingram is very cheap. You could be drafting Evan Ingram in the third round and justify that based on his production. So I think Evan Ingram is still a value. I think his price is going to increase.
Guy led the. This is one of the big things, Darren, people don't understand about tight end premium is it really only affects the guys who catch a lot of passes, and that's Evan Ingram.
Yeah, that was the quietest 114 catch season for a tight end
now Ridley isn't going to be there, and maybe Zay Jones isn't going to be there. I like and just the opposite. If this was underdog and I was staring at this board, I would be more interested in Kittles, and Kittles, Kittle,
Skittles.
Kittles from Villanova, back in the day. Who the Nets drafted instead of Kobe Bryant. So Kittle, big play, half PPR. I'm more interested, but here Evan Ingram, I think, is and to be fair, he does go earlier on the FFPC than he does on underdog, but I still like him there. I like Amari in the fifth round too.
Yeah, I mean, he showed. It wasn't with again. I'd have to go back to the stats, but he did a lot of those his damage with Flacco at quarterback. But I think still a solid pick there.
Yeah.
But Brock Bowers, I think, is overpriced there too. I mean,
I like Bowers, but yeah,
that's dynasty brain in the fifth round. It's I'll see what team he lands on, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, and as good as C.J. Stroud was, I'm not taking him there. A guy who doesn't run much. When you look at some of the names who are going behind him, I'm not paying the pound of flesh for C.J. Stroud. And no one was more of a Tajay Spears guy than I was. But, fifth round Tajay Spears, when we don't know for sure if Henry's coming back, who they might bring in to, it's not just, there's a very good chance he's not the only running back in Tennessee. I want to wait to see at least until free agency before I even though I love Tajay, that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, people are taking swings. I mean, with so much uncertainty with the free agency and the rookie landing spots, a lot of people are going off of talent, and that's what you're doing right now, for a lot of these players. But the thing is, for me, I'm more focused right now on just roster construction, just building a solid team, and more often than not, a couple of teams every draft are going to eliminate themselves by doing something silly, and then you're competing really against 9 or 10 other teams.
Yeah, that's always been my strategy, but you see it less and less, unfortunately. Sixth round, I think Christian Kirk is a good value. I drafted a ton of Jake Ferguson last year. I'm not interested there. Oh, by the way, the point I wanted to make is, remember when I said I like taking McCaffrey because of McCaffrey, Hall, and Bijan, and I'll throw Gibbs in there now as well. you get one of those guys and you don't feel the need to dip into a running back in this range. And it's a lot of guesswork, like you said. 6th round Pollard, Ramondre, Aaron Jones, Kamara. I mean, there's a couple guys I like more than another, but we don't know if Alvin Kamara is even going to be in New Orleans. We don't know where Tony Pollard is going to be. Ramondre did not look the same last year. I've drafted a decent amount of them so far, but for me, I'm focusing more on Christian Kirk. I like Terry McLaurin with the upgraded quarterback. Kyle Pitts is fine. Addison is fine. So those are the guys that I like, and I love Anthony Richardson, but boy, that's a rich price. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Richardson coming off the injury, I'd be a little hesitant there. He could be an injury-prone guy. You could be doing the same thing next year as you did last year. But it's a good, like, if you look, again, I'm referring to another part of the site, but one of the cool things you can
Tell
do.
me where to go.
Go to the homepage. Go down to the winners, the 2023 winners, prize winners. And maybe this is something you don't know either. Click on the not winner analysis. Go back to the homepage. Scroll up. I'm sorry. 2023 winners on the left. 2023 prize winners. Click on that. Now click on best ball tourneys. And what this does is it lists all of the teams that won in all the tournaments last year. So what you can do
I
now,
did know about this.
You click on the draft board for the guy who won the tournament up on row number 1. And so Toyo.
Yeah, that's Toyo, yeah.
You click on that and it'll bring up the draft board. And you can look at his team and see, how did these guys who won the tournaments, what did they do? So if you look at his team, it's actually team 11. So you see.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know that he was going to win. He was in with Billy Musio.
I mean, what is Musio doing drafting 5 running backs in a row? That's so robust, RB. He must be living at the Sizzler when he drafted this team. That's
my God. Billy, well, Billy can't draft anymore, and this is the way you're going to go out your last season?
He helped. He was. I think he was in so many drafts. He was doing an extreme strategy. Everyone, but hey,
which makes no sense for the FFPC. And I love Billy, but the FFPC, the people don't understand the nature of the tournaments they're playing. In the 2 people advance. And then week 15, 2 teams out of 12 advance. So you've got a 17% chance. Week 16, 3 teams advance to the finals. So you've got a 25% chance of advancing. Yes, you're going to go up against 70 teams that last week. But come on. I don't think you need to build teams, Darren, like
I think what he was doing was he was heavily into having unique combinations, and that was what that. It's not that he was all about I need running backs to win the tourney. I think he was more diving into this is a combination of players. And if you look at Toyo's team over in 11, this is the one thing I noticed about this. He has 0 stacks, right?
Yep.
He has Taysom Hill, which set the world like on its head. So he was able to win this thing with no stacks and Taysom Hill. It really, once you get into those playoffs, it really
Quentin Johnson. Yeah, I mean, it's not that great of a team, but
he had those guys that hit on those weeks. Every week he had the right guys.
Yeah, and Lamar, you needed Lamar the last week.
He had Lamar and CeeDee Lamb. Those were the two big ones.
Yeah, and you know what? Congratulations to him.
Yeah.
I was in that week, and I did not have CeeDee Lamb or Lamar Jackson. So that's that. So all
And
right,
that's
enough of that. Enough of
yeah.
last year. All right, we're gonna do one or two more rounds, and we're gonna get out of here. Um, let's look at round 7. I'm not an Odunze guy like some people. I mean, to me, Dak is the one who really jumps out at me. The number one quarterback last year. I don't know what's changed, but he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's going as the 8th quarterback off the board in the 7th round. I think Dak is very interesting here. I think Chris Godwin slipping to the end of the 7th round is interesting, and I think Eckler's a little bit interesting. Anyone you like more than another here?
Yeah, I think the price for Hawkinson is a little rich with so much
Oh, that's ridiculous. The guys blew
unknown.
out 3 ligaments the last week of the season.
Yeah. Given this is a tournament, that's a dead spot for how many weeks that, you're going to be maybe
Yeah,
the
I would be interested in him closer to the 10th, 11th round.
yeah.
Right. I don't think, if you look at the guy right after him, Komet, how much better might Hawkinson be coming back in week 10? He could, I get the thought behind it, but he wasn't exactly a big spike week guy, was he? I mean,
I don't think he was. I think the year before,
yeah.
he was being drafted like in the 2nd round.
Well, when they lost Cousins, but let's look at players' stats. It kind of made me curious. And you just see, kind of what you can do here. So he did have some pretty big spike weeks.
4 weeks with 20 points, but
yeah.
then nothing at the end of the season.
Right. And he was banged up a little bit, and then he had the big injury, and they lost Kirk Cousins.
Right.
So I get it, but right now you don't know Cousins is back. You don't know when Hawkinson is back. And the problem is when you give up a 7th round pick to a guy who's going to sit for 9, 10, if we thought that Hawkinson was going to be suspended for 4 games, would he go there or later? If he was
it's kind of like what Jamison Williams. He was out for how many weeks last year? I kind of parallel him with Jamison Williams because you knew you were drafting him with not going to have him for so many weeks at the beginning of the season. James Conner, I think, is interesting there in the 7th round. I don't know who they're gonna. He could still be the guy.
Yeah,
and he really.
I missed out on him last year. I think and I think Monty is interesting if you think Gibbs might get hurt at some point.
Right.
All right. Let's talk about the rookies, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. I'm just jumping down a little bit. I love them at ADP. Both of them run the ball a lot, and I think that's a really good price for 2 guys that are going to be starters on their team. Thoughts?
10th round, yeah, that's worth a shot. They're probably going to be your QB2, right?
Right.
So that's perfect.
And then you're hoping that they come on late, and they've got Caleb Williams had like 11 rushing touchdowns last year, and Jaden Daniels is a big rusher. Last question before we get out of here. I've got a sick daughter, and it's been a long week. Who's your favorite late player right now?
Late players, I'm kind of mixing it up. I'm hitting the receivers. What I found over the years is hitting those late rookie receivers really pays off. So it's not a person; it's more of a profile. So I'll tend to load up on those rookie receivers. It's almost they don't cost you anything, right? They're almost free.
And
Swallow.
there's more of them this year.
I'll
Everyone
I'll mix
says
them up.
it's a great rookie wide receiver class.
Right.
If I, you know, right now, I mean, I have done more underdogs than I have anything else right now. But I'm quickly looking, I've got 45% Brian Robinson, 40% Javon Baker, 35% Trey Palmer, 25% Roman Wilson, 25% Troy Franklin. And there's some other guys that I got to them late. Also at running back, I liked some guys, some of these late rookie running backs. I like the kid from Kentucky, Ray
Davis.
Ray Davis, and I really like Ray Davis,
Yeah.
and he's going to continue to be cheap because people get this whole thing in their head. He's old, yeah, he's old, but you know, like Tajay Spears last year. Well, he doesn't have a knee. Well, yeah, if I was drafting him for Dynasty,
Right.
the fact that he might only play 3 years matters. Best ball, I don't care if a running back played 5 years in college and he might only, you know, to your point earlier, a lot of people can't separate their Dynasty brain from their best ball brain.
Yeah, that's what I find. But now's the time to be hitting the rookies late, not overpaying before we hit the combine and the prices go up. And that's like if you hit those charts from if you went to last year's ADP, it's an interesting exercise to go back and see because it's crazy. Like the day of the NFL draft or when the combine is like when all the trends shift.
Right.
They either go up or they'll go down. It's really interesting.
And what's interesting is a lot of times that's when the workout warriors jump.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great opportunity not to draft someone, right?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't like someone in the 14th round and all of a sudden he runs this amazing, you know, or he jumps really high, you know, and now he's going 3 rounds earlier. And you know the phenomenon. The phenomenon, Mojo, is that because the FFPC is such a kind of tight group of people, they all kind of want to outdo each other to get the hot guy. So it almost kind of supercharges these runs that we get. Where, you know, like I've seen every year when Dave Hubbard, everyone knows who Dave Hubbard really likes. And all of a sudden the guy's 5 rounds earlier because everyone wants to snipe Dave Hubbard on the guy they know he likes. And there's other people like that who they do it to.
Yeah, it becomes drafting for show as opposed to drafting to win type of thing. Like,
Yeah.
it is the same guys in a lot of those drafts, and you sort of know who their targets are, and you know you're going to have to reach early. It's that there's so many layers to this game. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yep. And I will be doing a lot of layering as we go forward this year. We've got 22 episodes more to go on the Run to Daylight podcast for this year at minimum. I've made a commitment to that many. So I want to thank Darren for joining us. It is always a pleasure to have him on to review his site. Not only is he a great site warrior, he is a great player and probably one of the more underrated players that I go up against. So Darren, thank you very much for joining. I also want to thank our friends over at the FFPC. Go to myffpc.com, get in one of these drafts. You might get to go up against the Fantasy Mojo or Best Ball NFL. And that's going to do it for today. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Todd.